we won't get anything. The thing is, we forget to hit record, and we've talked probably already now for about 20, 20 minutes. So
Uh,
if you think the podcast is long, if you're like, wow, they can
right.
really go on, just realize that there's times where we've had like half an hour conversations before we've ever hit record.
Yes.
So,
And then another half hour after.
right? Ooh, so what do we start with? Do we start with Comic-Con or House of the Dragon? House of the Dragon, episode 7. My favorite word, the penultimate episode, the one
Corliss is a terrible father. Let's just start with that.
I felt for him though.
Did you? This
I
guy out here, you
did.
went from a ship hand to a dragon rider, and he said, "Good job." And then just walks. I was about to slap him through the TV.
But you could see the pride. You could see the the pride in him. Like both of his sons, um, are taking their different paths. Because the one is like he offered.
Salt and sea.
Yeah, he offered. Hey, like, hey, if you feel like you can get on a dragon, we'll get you out there and we'll do this. And he said no. He turned it down. He said, "My place is here on a boat."
Is he ever going to tell Rhaenyra that those are his kids, his chillin'?
Well, in the book, yes, because he asked for them to be legitimized so they can be his heirs.
That was Rhaenys last wish.
Yeah. So yeah,
And then
in the
after
like
what's
book,
her name denied him, I feel like he needs an heir. So
right. And I felt like it was kind of like that was his it was his he's struggling to connect with any sort of family he's got right at the moment.
yes,
You know? That's I just felt for him because like everybody, I mean, your grandkids don't want anything to do with you. Let's face it, the
yeah,
strong
and that's
boys.
interesting. Why don't they want anything to do with him? I mean,
I
he hasn't always been present, but like, I don't know. I was kind of like, why don't?
I don't know. I mean, like it's. I guess it's because it's grandpa. It's not their dad. I mean, it's
He's not cool. He's not a cool guy. He's not a cool dad.
right. I mean, because I
Cool
mean, if
grandpa.
you look at it, technically, the strong boys are supposed to be his his grandkids too, but they're not black. I mean, let's be it's like when he was like
There's just minor differences.
and when Jay said when he had when they finally had the conversation of like, oh, are we gonna do this? Are we gonna have this conversation? When he said, did you not think I would come out looking
Yeah,
like him? And I
I
thought,
went, oof.
when he started that conversation, I was like, because it's usually one of my kids, her boyfriend, and me watching it. And people would hate watching it because we literally talk through the entire, like
It's me and Sarah.
it's all Mystery Science Theater commentary throughout the thing. It was like when he was like, basically he opened his mouth and started by, I said, oh, I said, it's one of those. She's probably thinking of like, we're we gonna do this now. Are we gonna have this talk?
Are we gonna do this right now? If we're gonna
Are
do
we
this,
gonna
we
do
just
this
do
right
this
now?
right now. Yeah, I mean, he is so sick of her this season. I
He is in his
mean,
feelings about her.
he has had it with her, and it went over my head. I feel like I keep up with the show pretty well, but there were some dots that just don't connect. So when he mentioned the whole, with you getting all of these bastards to do this, what does that do for my claim? And I was like, what is he complaining about now? And then when Sarah explained it, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because if when she moves on, his claim is like, oh, of course, he's his claim to the throne. Obviously, he's got some Targaryen blood, whether the hair's there or not, because he can ride a dragon. But now there's only two
Right.
because sacrificed like 60 of them. But when he made that point, that was a point of view that I hadn't thought of, and then went over my head anyway. So I needed Sarah to explain it to me. But
Yeah.
I mean, he is just going through it.
He was not, yeah, and then he was just like, he finally just kind of said, I thought his word usage of mongrel was a little bold
Yeah, that
considering
one
his
I tilted my head a little bit at that.
Considering he then goes on to talk about how aware he is of his
Right.
lineage. I thought that's bold to
Yeah.
but I'm like, I mean, I get it. I get it because he's thinking, well, these could be your half brothers or sisters that are getting on dragons, and we've got no idea. So they can come in and be like, I'm now heir to the throne. Like my dragon was pretty much the only
That
thing,
was it.
right. But I mean, I mean, what else were they going to do? And which is very funny because in the book, now that we've passed that part, in the book, it's very much set up that he's the one that kind of comes up with the idea. So
Really?
it's interesting that they kind of flipped that on its head and made him very, along with the dragon wranglers. Is that what they're called? The ones in the one that
Something like that. I mean,
staged
that
a
if that's
strike,
not their title, that's what their title should be, because that's exactly what they are.
that staged
Oh wait, you're muted. I can't hear you anymore.
the ones that were like staged a strike we're like, there, we're not doing
Yes.
this. We've
Yeah.
with this is where we draw our line.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, because they tried it a week before and they lost one of their
it's
stagehands.
like we're
So
all not real eager to slit our own throats in
right.
pursuit of having a
And
dragon army.
you're besmirching the dragons by having these randoms come in on boats. And I'm curious if you're saying that Jace went along with it, or was the idea man in the book. I'm curious what they are potentially setting up with his character. Like maybe like what are they planning? I mean, it could be nothing. It could just be a creative choice, but I'm curious if in the book he was the one that kind of went along with it. And this season, it's been very clear that he is just getting increasingly frustrated with the queen,
Right.
his mother. And I have been vocal on this podcast about how on a lot of them, I'm kind of like, yeah, you deserve to be upset. But
Right.
now it's like, so they've changed this other part
Right.
to add to the frustrations. I wonder if that's just to add layers to their relationship, or are they trying to
I
go down
think
a
that
path and switch something.
I
Yeah.
think that's it. This just show that it's I think that, and it does show the um whereas they really kind of don't say what he said in the what he said in the show, he is not said in the book, as far as like you have the possibilities. Now, I mean, it might have been alluded to as far as like maybe other things that have been said, like just with the narrators of the story, but having somebody that is a quote unquote bastard say, this is a dangerous slope that we're doing because you already have one usurper. How many more are we possibly introducing that will also then have dragons? So I think it was to show complexity between their relationship, that he's kind of like, maybe at this point they're kind of using him as an audience like mirror, like, okay, the
Yeah.
audience has got to be thinking, well, what, like, and he's there to vocalize it and put it in to get that, which again, I mean, we could talk about, like, that's what sometimes Disney and other shows are having a problem with, is you have to have an audience awareness that the audience
Right.
might have questions that kind of are need to be answered. So I think it's a whole bunch of those things. I think it layers their relationship, and it gives the audience a chance to have somebody on the screen say the things that you might be sitting there thinking.
That makes sense. That makes sense because yeah. And that's good for them for adding that then, because I was curious when you said that that was different from the book. I'm like, are they gonna change something really big? But yeah, it's just
Right.
adding layers and giving him the perspective of the audience to move the story along, but more importantly, to answer the questions that they can't just like break the fourth wall and be like, so this is where we're going to reference this and this.
Right.
You have a character in there that you can use to do that.
Right. To be like, hey, time out. Don't you think this?
Yeah.
So, do you want to discuss Oscar Tully channeling Lady Mormont, or shall we go into how the cookout in the bar
All right.
in
So
Dragon Pit?
Oscar Tully,
Oscar Tully
he he's in
channeled
charge.
her.
Do it.
He channeled her, Lady Mormont. You needed to.
Yes, he did. And I liked his he's in charge, and he made it clear to Damon that I know what you did and I'm not okay with it. And he said, like, look, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. So he kind of, even though he, not even against his better judgment, but even though in his heart he probably didn't want to, he had the awareness to realize like there is a war going on. And as much as you like to be Switzerland and say, oh, we're neutral, that's not how it works. So he
Right.
had to make a choice that was not going to be favorable for, well, anybody really. And he stood 10 toes down and was like, this is what I'm doing. And he told his people. And then you think, okay, so he's just kissing up to Damon. But on multiple occasions during that dialogue, he looked Damon in the face and was like, I don't like you. And in so many words. And I was like, all right, good for you.
He
Good for
was,
you.
yeah, he minced no words in his
Yeah,
feelings for, like, he even made a point to turn around to
that
Damon and be
was,
like,
yeah,
and even though like this is what we do, and you may not want to do it for a guy who sucks, you know,
exactly. Yeah.
like when he made like,
That was good.
I
That
kept
was
thinking, I kept thinking, oh, he is going to take out his knife. He's going to take out his sword. And wasn't it pretty much right after that that he then has the vision of his brother?
yes.
Now, this is how I took that, because he's like his brother, you know, looking juicy,
They brought
handsome
that
with
man back for 1 week and said, you can be young Viserys again. You don't have to put that makeup back on. He's like, okay, cool. And they're like, all right, psych, get back in the zombie makeup.
it's time to zombie fire. Like he's like, I think when he said, you know, you've always wanted this, or you know, you want this, and he was kind of like, I don't know if I do.
Yeah.
I think that whole thing with Oscar kind of highlighted like the issues that come with having to, you can't just make random edicts to people and have them follow through, and then you not have to bear some sort of consequence for that, and that
Oh, yeah.
you having to swing the sword and cut this guy's head off for something we all standing here in this courtyard know you did.
Yep.
um I think I think he thought the idea of being ruler, it's the whole like, you wanted to take the reservation, you didn't know how to hold the reservation. It's like, I think he like thinks, I love how much they use the word consort. Just kind of, they just kept saying
Every time.
king consort.
Every time.
And what, an old man is master of the side eye, just
Yep. And they
but
kept panning the camera over to him.
right. And
No, I
it's
think you're right because you could just see in his face the weight of it. And even with Viserys, who ruled for 80 years of peace,
right.
he had no wars in any of that. And in those visions, he was even in 80 years of peace, I still had to do all this and deal with this. And yeah, like you said, you can't just make
Yeah.
edicts and not have it come back to you, kind of like the whole blood and cheese situation. And he's been able to leave and not really deal with, I mean, I think it got brought up maybe once or twice with him
Right.
around, but for the most part, he hasn't really had to deal with the consequences
Yeah.
of that. Rhaenyra
Yep.
has, and she's not even the one that did it,
Well,
but
it
now you see very much so something that you demanded
right.
happen. It's in your
Because
face
when he
now.
did have to deal with the blood and cheese thing, it was from her. And
Right.
his response to it was, well, I'm dipping. Like,
I'm out.
I don't need this. And it's like,
Yeah.
because he didn't understand that ultimately how what he did falls upon her as far as how it looks like. I can't kill you, like she's like, I can't kill you, like and I'm the one that sent you out to, like, to you, trusting that you were going to handle some things but not go to this extent.
Yeah.
So it's like he does get confronted about it and is like, ugh, I don't like this. And now it's the same thing. He does something, and somebody brings it to his door. So you now are in the, if you wanted to play Rhaenyra, and somebody comes to you and says you did some ish, and now you gotta answer for it. You being the king consort, like you're the one that has to answer for all of this. And I think it was like, ooh, like that's that I don't know if I really like, I want to go out and I want to do a whole bunch of, I want to do the dirty work. I don't want to have to like rule over the dirty. Like I don't want to have to like delegate and do the politics
Yeah, it's a
and
lot easier to they always say the prince is the one that has more fun. They don't want that one doesn't want to be. I forget what movie or show it was, but there was a character that was the prince, and I think this is gonna bug me, but this character was a prince, and then there was another heir that was born, and they were like, "Oh, doesn't that bother you? Like you're not next in line." And he was like, "No, the prince has all the fun and none of the responsibility." Like
exactly.
Aegon even knew that, which is why the complete opposite
Right.
of Daemon, he was hiding. He did not want to be king. He could see everything that came with it, and he was like, "No, I'd rather be a prince." And they were like, "No, you have to be king." He literally said, "I will leave tonight. I'll be on a boat in an hour." Whereas Daemon has been thirsting for this throne for so long and only looking at the the being in charge part, but
Right.
not the being in
Being in
charge
charge
part.
part. Right. Like I get to like make people do
I
terrible
can do
things in
whatever I
my
want.
right. I get to make people do terrible things in my name. And I don't ever have to deal with it's like, but okay, but you're gonna have to deal with it in some sort
Yeah,
of way. You're gonna have to deal with
yeah.
it as far as like the court of opinion and stuff like that. And he doesn't want to be held to any of that. And I think, like I said, I think that like as soon as that happened with Oscar, where he's like, oh my god, like, and I think even just seeing, I think he even sort of gained a respect of um how do you say, like, of just even leadership. Like he saw like, oh, here's a child who is able to do the hard things that I myself can't do as an adult.
Right.
Like I've been pitching fits and wanting my way or whatever, and here's this kid who comes in who I thought I'd be able to push around,
Yeah.
and he comes in and lays down the law and is doing the hard things and has the balls to say to my face, I suck, several times. And he's like, I don't have that. I like whatever
Yeah.
this kid has got, I don't have. I'll throw me into battle. I'll fight all day long. And I think that's kind of, I think like you look at Amond and it's kind of the same way, but it's almost like Amon relishes the power. And I think like not, and I think Damon does, but not to the extent that, or maybe it's because Amon has no queen to answer to. And he's allowed to be what Damon's dream. But then I'm like, I think like I don't know if Damon would actually enjoy being king.
I think that it would be one of those dog chasing their tail, but once they get it, it's like, oh, I think he would walk up, he would sit on the Iron Throne, he would have his moment, his smirk. It was like, yeah, you all said I couldn't do it. Matter of fact, bring Otto Hightower in here. I want him to see me on the Iron. I think he would enjoy his moment. I think he would make some laws, do whatever. But once, like, same thing with Aegon, when the townspeople, and I know they're at war, but when the townspeople start coming in and having their questions, or you've got the different um, houses that want different things, that's when he would stop enjoying it And there'll probably be that first house that says this, and he's like, well, if they don't want to do this, then we'll let them starve. And then he'd like go about his day. And then when the consequences from that,
Which is kind of what Aemon's doing right now, because he doesn't
exactly.
care. He's a great in quotes wartime king, because all he's doing is making like plans for war, and he's enjoying that. But when it comes to the actual small folk of the town, he's like, lock them in here. I don't care if they starve. Like basically,
Yeah,
they're just cannon fodder for the dinosaur, for the dragon. Keep doing it.
it's close. It's like right there.
Right. He's like, just they're just cannon fodder for the dragons anyway. So it's like you have, yeah, or Damon, who's like he wants to be a wartime king, but he also does have to deal, like he's realizing like, oh, there's more to it than just, I can't always just do what I want. There are other kingdoms that are all involved here.
And I feel like the difference between the two of them is that in his heart, Damon also wants to be loved and accepted
Oh,
by his subjects, which is why having to deal with his own consequences is making him pause. Where I think Aemond
and the nightmares,
and the nightmares, yeah,
because the
he has to
nightmares are
deal
all
with
dealing with
those.
his decisions,
Yeah,
like things that
where
he's messed up, right?
Aemond doesn't care. He
Oh,
does not care about people's approval. So I think they're both in the same situation, but their character traits of needing people's approval or wanting people's approval, like they both really want the throne. I think they both be really good wartime kings or generals. But then when it comes to facing the consequences of their actions, I think one of them cares and one of them doesn't, because one of them is striving for approval, and the other one is literally like you said, I don't care.
right.
You are literally a wall for the dragons. And
Right.
Damon is like, well, I want people to like me.
Yeah, and I have my brother's legacy to live up to. Like my
Yeah,
brother, like people were in peace during that time. Like I want people to like me, and I want to be just as good as I would want my brother to be proud of me.
yeah.
And he wouldn't be super thrilled with what's going on right now. So it would have to be peaceful for him to be proud of me. Yeah, I think it's interesting in how they're both handling
They're
that.
in the same boat. Well, they're not in the same boat. They were on the same path, but they are handling it differently.
Yeah. Maybe they're in the same boat. They both have an oar and they're both rowing in different directions.
Right.
So
It
the
is
dragon,
interesting to see his development on his
yeah.
hallucination trip, because
Right, because during this part in the book, there's nothing going on with him. So they
yeah,
actually they have created something for him, and I think in a kind of a good way to kind of flesh him out, as far as him realizing, you know, that he doesn't want it, and that there are been a whole bunch of consequences to things he's done throughout time that's kind of led him to this point. So the
yeah.
dragon pit.
The
Some
barbecue.
of you may die.
That's that is 100% what crossed my mind. As soon as it happened, I got on Twitter
Oh,
and looked up that GIF and shared it, because I realize you're getting to a time of desperation. And yeah, when you've got dragons literally beneath your feet, I realize it's like, man, we're just wasting these. It's like I get it, but just seeing the
it was a
boatload full of people just whoosh, a better life. You might die, but
some of you may die. There's a
the
risk I am
risk
willing to
I'm
take.
willing to take. It was like
That's a very
I knew that I knew that some of them would die. I
mhm.
didn't think it was going to be a 10
Everybody.
point combo like all at once. I thought like, okay, who wants to go first? Everybody else back up. Oh, he got burned. Who's next? No, he was just whoosh, all of them, all of them. And the
I thought it
lucky
was
one,
great how they did that, instead of like, and I thought it was great how they did that. They I was expecting it too, that they were going to be like, okay, one by one, here we
yeah,
go. Um, but I thought it was kind of great. The speech, she leads him in there and like says, like, brings up Vermithor, who again is the second biggest
That was
dragon.
wild. The Jurassic Park style stomping, and then I was telling Sarah the way they used not his voice, but his sounds,
Oh
where you
yeah.
could tell he was so big because his sound would start and you would feel it carrying to his throat from like the
Yeah.
back of his body.
Oh yeah.
And then while that one is still echoing, you can hear like the next one loading.
Right. Exactly right. That's
Just
a big
traveling through the body.
it's a big, big dragon. And so yes, but I love the speech. And then like she brings up Vermithor and she's like, hey, calm down. We're about to do we're about to do some things. And hightails it out of there. Like all but says, everybody else follow me and stand behind something.
Yep. Yep.
Without saying, y'all might want to take some cover. This might not go well. Like she quickly, Tom Cruise runs out of there
Yes.
and gets stadium seating for the event.
And that was a gladiator pit. She was sitting up
Yes.
there like this, just watching. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was wild. Visually, a great scene. And then they fell into the pit, which extended it and gave it more depth.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was great. But yeah, when she turned around, I was like, I have nothing left to say. I literally looked at Sarah. I was like, she's really leaving. She's
She's
really
really
leaving.
leaving.
And then she ended up getting, and I was like, oh, she's getting a better view. But still, like, that would not instill confidence in me. But at that point, it was too late. It was too late.
It was
And I
too
was
late.
surprised that the dragon Vermithor was just like, I'm gonna cook everybody. Like all of them.
You woke me up. You woke me up and you put it would be like me being asleep and you tap me on the shoulder and I'm at Golden Corral. Like if you don't think I'm gonna eat.
Yeah,
I mean, if I'm sitting there
that
at the
was
Cracker
great.
Barrel and I'm like,
Yeah.
there's a
You woke
buffet in
me up
front of
out of my
me.
sleep. You put a
There's
buffet in front of me.
right.
I'm
Yeah, like
gonna
this.
eat.
Janelle, wake up. They grab a plate. I'm grabbing a plate. Like, I
It's
mean,
true. That was dark. That was one of the things. Again, desperate times call for desperate measures. The ends justify the means. You can say whatever you want. You sent this message out for the promise of a better life. And to be
right.
fair, you did tell them there was some risk involved, but for it to be so soon after your speech and for it to be everyone, like I think out of these 60 people that were in there, Hugh Hammer, the other
Huge
guy, and then the
game.
one lady who almost got cooked before Hugh stopped her. So like three people survived.
Right.
That's wild.
But I kept thinking when, like, because she runs off, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm thinking they need to snatch her quick because if she gets back to King's Landing and tells people how it went down, I was like,
Yeah.
you need to control the propaganda machine
Give
quickly
her a
here.
new life, but your new life is going to exist inside these walls.
Right. Because you
Here's
can't
a
go back
house.
and tell
Here's some
anybody
sleep.
how
What
this
about my
happened.
family? What about them?
Right. We're your family now.
No, yeah, because that was one
You
of the
wanted to be
things.
a Targaryen? Well, here
Right.
you are.
That was one of the things where I was like, I don't know how we're going to spin this one in a positive light. Because I mean, the people at King's Landing, obviously the guards and all them didn't really know because they wouldn't have let them leave. But the people at the bars and all of that, like they know roughly how many people left.
I wonder if that's why she didn't do them one at a time. Because if you were to be seventh in line and 1 through 6, you find that aren't coming back out of the dragon pit, are you going in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going in? Are you
No.
trying?
No.
Right.
There's like part of me that's like, yeah, I would. But
Right.
that death
Hell yeah,
just
I'm getting a
looked
dragon.
so painful.
That the guy
that I
slit his
don't think I
neck.
would.
The guy
Do what?
slit his neck to avoid getting
Right,
cooked.
exactly, exactly.
That's it
Yeah,
was so bad. He was like,
that's the part. Like, if it was like a quick death, I'd be like, you know what? Yeah, I'll roll the dice and see what happens. But that just looks, sounds, and smells like pure agony. I I don't know if I would, which to your point makes sense why she's like, no, this is going to be a group interview
the group project.
because
Some
one
of
by
you will get
one,
A's.
yeah. Some of us will get B's, some of you will get F's. A's and
Right.
F's are the only two options.
Right, right.
Either you pass or you fail. And by
And you're like, when you hear there's only two dragons
yeah,
and you bring in 35 people, you got to be like, all right, now look to your right. Now look to your left. There's only two dragons.
and then look farther to your left because
Right.
those people too.
Right. You can do the math here.
Yeah,
There are two dragons. There are 35 of you. I guess she didn't really explain what not getting a dragon.
right. Yeah, she was like, "Are you willing to take that chance?" I was like, "Oh, okay." So is the alternative like, "Ah, I didn't
Oh,
get to,
dang.
I
You
still
didn't get
get
a
to live
dragon.
here at Dragonstone, right?" Like, well, I mean, yeah, I
Mm.
can tell you whatever you want. Like, yeah, you
Right.
can have the castle,
What do you need to hear in
right?
order to go into that dragon fit?
I can
Because,
tell you whatever because once you go in there, either you come out with the dragon or you don't come out.
right.
I can say whatever.
Yeah. What do you need me to say?
You
Because
want Dragonstone, or you want Dragonstone and Driftmark? I'll give them both to you. You don't even worry about it. Two
I'll
for one
promise you
special.
riches
Yeah.
beyond compare.
Now, the one thing I didn't get, and maybe I need to go back and rewatch the last episode, but I think in the Vale where Sheep Stealer is that where they're at?
Um, did you said at the Vale? Yes, with
So
Sheep
why
Stealer.
are
Mhm.
they getting kicked out? Like, I know that
They're
what's her
not.
face found the dragon or the evidence of a dragon,
They're
but
not getting kicked out. They were there to they were there to shore up her make because like it was like, okay, well, here's the dragons. But the boys were always going to go off to Pentos to be away of like completely away from the fighting,
gotcha.
because even like
Yeah,
because like that's the reason she wanted dragons, was like this is still too in the mix as far
it's
as this
in
war
yeah.
goes. So we want the boys have got to be gone. Like they're going to be on a ship, on a boat to Pentos. um so but we see that Rainier, or not Rainier, I guess Raina is like, I'm gonna go get me a dragon.
Yeah, okay, because just the way it looked, because my first thing was when they were there last episode, I remember thinking that's not far enough away. Like that was my first
Right.
thought.
Well, you would be right.
Yeah. And so then, she starts talking about Sheep Stealer and, well, hey, I wanted a dragon. Here's a dragon. Oh, it's a baby dragon. That doesn't count, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So then the conversation goes, and I just see them being escorted out. And I was like, oh, did they get the boot? But that
Yeah.
makes sense. They were there to
Yeah.
shore up alliances and then continue on their
Right.
journey to the Outer Rim.
Give you a dragon. She's like, whoa, you have a dragon. Like,
Yeah.
that are you talking about? And so yes, it looks like then that they're gonna give Sheep Stealer to Raina, which again, I'm not mad about. I mean, like, I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, you're erasing. I mean, they're like, you're erasing a black character, and I was like, well, I mean, it's but Corliss wasn't, and
Right. That's
I'm
yeah.
like, so
So
you do like, okay, you lost one, but like, there's an entire
you
family that
gained a whole
wasn't.
Valerian house. Yeah. I
Right,
there
you're
was
like,
so I didn't read the books, but I knew that people were complaining about that. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And then I started going through the comments, and then I was like, oh yeah, the Valerians being black was new. So I was like, you win some, you lose some. I
right,
think you
there's
got the
like,
better end of this deal.
you got Adam and Alan and Corliss
Yeah.
and Raina and Bela and Laner. I mean, he's still out there somewhere. I mean, like,
That is a good question though. If Reyna and all them skedaddle out to Pentos, like what if they're just like out there avoiding the war and then they just bump into each other in the street and it's like, hey, you're supposed to be dead.
huh, you look different.
Yeah, you
I
shaved
don't.
your head.
Yeah, I don't know
You're
how.
not
I don't
burned
know
to
if
a
they're
crisp.
just like, and brother fell off a boat and he's dead now. Like, I don't know how they're handling. I don't know how. It would be weird to bring him back, but maybe
I
they'll.
hope they don't, just based off what I know from the books where he actually did die, but they wanted the blacks to
Sure.
remain the good guys,
Right.
so they allowed him to stay alive. Like I realized that
Right.
is the reason that you went that direction, but I think bringing him back, whenever you bring him back, wouldn't make sense to me.
Right. Unless he played a well, which we're going to. This is a great segue because maybe they'll have him play a guy who's another guy who's another guy.
Oh,
Another.
this is a
I'm just a
perfect
dude
segue.
playing a dude
That is
playing
a
another dude.
perfect
Maybe they
segue.
have him be somebody in the book that they that we're not aware of. That's he's going to play a dude playing another dude playing another dude. And what we're talking about is Comic-Con, Disney, especially Marvel, Disney's
Their
reveal,
bombshell.
their bombshell of RDJ playing not just Doctor Doom. They did credit him as Victor Von Doom. So it
So
wasn't
not
just
Anthony Stark, like who is happens to be Von Doom.
right. They did not say he was, they did not say he was, they did not even call him just Doctor Doom. They called him Victor Von Dooms, which maybe that means nothing. I mean, we are also again talking about Disney Marvel here, which they might not even, it's like, do you understand the words that are coming out of your own mouth? No, I don't know. We won't know. And I don't know when they said that movie's coming out. 2020.
2020. Oh, wait a minute.
No,
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 no.
that does not make sense.
2026? No.
Hold on. Avenger. There was two Avengers. There
Right.
was Avengers Secret Wars and then D-Day. Or Doomsday, not D-Day. Which, okay. Um, okay. MCU's Doctor Doom cast at last. Blah 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 blah. But when is it coming out? Really? I don't want your ad. I just want to know the date. May 7th, 2027. Okay. Whoa,
Oh,
wait a minute. No. Okay. Avengers Doomsday,
okay.
May 2026. Secret Wars 2027.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
So,
Give me your thoughts.
and we're getting Fantastic Four next year.
Yes.
Okay. My thoughts on I'm actually really glad to see um the opinion split on it. I was not worried, but like I didn't want there to be an overwhelming like, yes, we're back, baby, we've done it. This is how this is how I view it. Or here's my concerns about it. You know, because you're also a Cardinal baseball fan. We in the Cardinals have a wonderful habit of when it's time for needing new blood, needing a new player, what we love to do is grab old players and bring
Yes.
them back. Like, because there people were like, you know who should we should get right now during the trade deadline? We should try to pursue Tyler O'Neill and Harrison Bader. And I'm like,
I
that
saw that.
is the equivalent of going, I can't think outside my high school. Like it is such, and that is kind of my concern with what they've done here is like, well, we know we know we had aces with him, so you know what we're gonna do? We're just gonna bring him back as Victor Von Doom, and the crowd is gonna love it. And I'm like, you're right. And they did, and they went ape-ish in that hall. And then I feel like, pardon my French, but like post nut, clarity was like,
For everyone.
right, was like, well, wait, because my thought was there is one comic, one what if comic that deals with Victor Von Doom inhabiting Tony Stark's body and or switching, he makes Tony Stark's persona go into Victor Von Doom's. Victor Von Doom's goes into Tony Stark so he can just create havoc that way. It is one comic.
Yep.
That's if you're building, I don't know how long you're keeping, that's my other concern. I don't know how long you're keeping Robert Downey Jr. as Victor Von Doom, because if he, let's just say he's a variant. So are you just bringing him back for a short amount of time using the storyline, and you're then going to transition to another one, which again, Marvel also has a horrible, you got William Hurt again, he died, William Hurt, but now he's Harrison Ford. And then you've had, several Incredible Hulks, and you've had a few Spider guys. I'm
Right.
sticking by that. Spider
And
guys
Rhodey.
and Rhodey. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, so you keep recasting people. I mean, like sometimes due to legitimate reasons. So you're going into that. So if like you're only bringing him in for a brief period of time, just to hype things up, but then you're transitioning to another one. It's like, what am I doing? And then it's, if you're not and you're keeping him, you're like, okay, are we just like, who comes back next? Does Chris Evans come back? Is
Framing it up as it's a different character, though, is a weak argument. I realize that Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. played an incredible Tony Stark slash
yes.
Iron Man, and Victor Von Doom, while he does have a lot of depth as a character, you could, if you wanted to, break it down and say Von Doom is Tony Stark if Tony Stark let his intrusive thoughts win. Like
And was a
they have,
witch. I mean,
yeah,
I mean,
yes, exactly.
Victor
Like
Von Doom is like, has a
yeah,
really effed up
he,
past, and
yes,
he's a witch.
exactly. So while he is a very smart guy who's very innovative, and you think, oh, we have someone like that, let's just cast that same guy. Obviously, they had to do something after they fired Jonathan Majors. You have proven that recasting
Which,
is
wait,
possible. Yes.
at least they did not bring him back as Kang. I mean,
That the meme, oh,
yes, the dude playing another dude playing in
I
reference to
if
Tropic
they
Thunder. If you
did,
haven't seen Tropic
honestly, if they
Thunder,
had the balls to do it, I probably would have been okay with it. It just you know what? Why not? Why not? Let's see what we can get away with.
if you're, but you'd have to go full Tropic Thunder.
Yes. No, you've proven that recasting can happen. You've done it. And I realize you made a choice with Chadwick Boseman, but with all the names you also just listed, you've proven that you can recast. You had all of these plans set up for Kang, and I know you had a few missteps, obviously, with Jonathan Majors and just the way that his variant was received in Ant-Man. Honestly, it wasn't him, it was just the movie in general. But to completely pivot, such a hard pivot, to just erase him completely and bring in Victor Von Doom, who we've been asking for in this way, was a risky move. And then you made it even more risky by trying to be safer, because I think they wanted to make a safe pick, but by picking someone that has already played such a huge role,
Iconic. Yes.
iconic role, to me,
Universe saving.
universe, it just, I mean, we all know how we felt watching Endgame. Like,
Yeah,
so you can't tell me, like, arguably, the most important character in the Infinity Saga was Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr. So to bring back Robert Downey Jr. as such an important villain was them trying to play it safe, but they played it so safe that it became risky. And while I think that Robert Downey Jr. will do a phenomenal job because he's a phenomenal actor, you
sure.
saw more of his evil side in Oppenheimer. As someone who is has enjoyed the MCU, enjoyed the performances of these characters, it is weird to me to see such an important character get such an important character actor get put to play another very important character in the same universe.
Which the
It,
only way they can possibly pull it off is if he never takes off his mask.
which someone on TikTok in our comment thread about this did say that, but my argument, which is why that won't happen, is because the reason why he spent almost no time in his suit in Iron Man 3 is because he cost way too much. So I don't think they're going to bring in that person who cost as much as he did and say, don't take your mask off. I could be wrong, but I just,
So you don't
and
see it as like a James Earl Jones Vader kind of thing.
I don't think so. I and I was hoping because when I first, like you said, everyone cheered.
Right.
I lost my mind,
I texted
but
you.
yes, but even before I slept on it, I had already like my initial thought was like, "Let's go! RDJ is back. The Russo brothers are back," and that was real excitement. And then like 3 minutes later, I started to come down and then started to process, and I'm like, well, "Wait a minute." So then I thought, okay, well, it's for the Fantastic Four movie. They've already established that it's in the 60s. They've already established that it's in a different universe from the one we're on. So maybe that's just that variant. And then I'm like, nope, nope, nope. Fantastic Four has Galactus as their villain. This is for the Avengers. I just, I don't, I know we know little to nothing about it. And I know Fantastic Four is probably going to do some stuff.
Like pull, you think he follows them out of their universe to see? And again, this is also my problem is if let's say he follows them out of their universe or they pull him out of their universe into this one, because I don't know how the Fantastic Four are going to come into our, because again,
Right.
you can't keep, because of even in, not a spoiler, even in Deadpool, they're still making very much the 616 argument that there is a 616 that is the main timeline. So I can't imagine that you're not going to bring in the Fantastic Four into the main timeline. Like that
Right.
would be odd to me. So then you're either pulling him in or he somehow backdoors his way into it on accident. I my also issue is they're getting really messy with timelines. They're not doing a good job as far as one, I think properly explaining them to people. Two, I think there's so many of them now that people are like, okay, you keep saying 616 is it, but then you keep putting a lot of major characters in other one, like which one, how, why is this one the main time? Is this just because you're doing I it just it's messy, and I'm thinking if you pull him out of that, then is he not going to be the Von Doom for, then does he become the main Von Doom for this timeline? Does he not last in I don't want to say the actual, but like the one that you're going to then go on with? Are you planning on, is he a one and out? Like it would blow my mind that he's going to be a one and out character. Like you keep
Unless it's just that variant is a one and out, like they were planning
right,
with
right.
Kang and Ant-Man, where he was got beaten by a group of ants. But there's 100 other ones, and he wasn't the main one. And since they're
It's a
going with
huge movie though to do
that's my thing.
to
That's my
focus
thing.
on
If
a
it was a
variant.
one-off, if it was something else, I would say, okay, it's a variant, it's a one-off. But you are saying that this is an Avengers movie.
Right.
So how are you going to pull this off unless you are going with the Secret Wars storyline? They're bringing them in from all different universes. So maybe he is just a variant. Maybe what they're taking. So in the Kang Dynasty, we were going to see a lot of Kangs. And so maybe they're taking a piece of that. And in Avengers Doomsday, there are actually going to be, and I know I'm getting like
Right.
very into the weeds now, but
No, I know. Yeah, I'm not shaking my head at you. Like I know I can see where you're going, and I'm just like,
I'm thinking maybe Avengers Doomsday is like there are more than one Doctor Doom. And at Comic-Con, they decided to announce that Tony Stark would be
it's
Victor Von Doom, but
but
it's like a bait and switch, and it's just like he's
that
a Von Doom, and we're gonna meet, Mads Mikkelsen as the real one, and Tony Stark or RDJ is just a Von Doom from a different universe.
wouldn't it blow your mind that they would do that big of an announcement for a throwaway? That would
It
because
would,
again,
but if we're since we're at a low point, maybe they're just like this will bring the hype back, and then
which is crazy because if he essentially is what John Krasinski was for Doctor Strange madness of multiverse of
yeah,
madness, you didn't bring him out. And everyone was wanting Krasinski as um Reed Richards. Everyone was wanting it. So you would have thought like, whoa, like that would have been great. And then like,
yeah.
but I mean, like they held it to that movie, which again was a huge thing because you got that payoff. That was fan service. Everybody wanted John Krasinski as Reed Richards. He was Reed Richards, but he was a boom. Everybody then was very. That's why I'm saying is that is a huge risk because if you are doing him as a one-off, you have already done that with a character that everybody was angling for. And nobody's angled for Robert Downey Jr. to be Victor Von Doom. People were
Maybe he'll be a longer one-off. Like maybe he will be there will be a group of Kangs, a group of Dooms that are villains in this movie, but in the end, the 6161 is the main one or whatever. But I don't disagree with what you're saying because all of that is assuming that they realize that making RDJ Doctor Doom isn't the best idea. There is a very good chance that they looked at this, ran the numbers, decided, no, this is our Victor Von Doom for the foreseeable future. And I don't know, because that also brings into question, like you said, unless the mask never comes off, when he fights, unless this entire thing and he never sets foot on 616, the minute his mask comes off, everyone, legitimately everyone, is going to be like, oh, you look a lot like the savior of the universe.
right.
Tony Stark, you may have heard of him. You're said driving in one of his cars, you're using one of his gadgets, and oh yeah, by the way, he kind of saved the world. Like, there's no way that that conversation doesn't happen. So that's why I have to believe that he is a variant, and Avengers Doomsday is going to include multiple Doctor Dooms, and they were just doing this as a bombshell to basically just dominate the weekend.
But it's like, and I think it's like, I don't even mind if they decide to use that what if comic, if that's like one of, but to me, you would have to start laying the groundwork for that so much more ahead of time. You can't have that as just, and it's a random movie. Like it's when it's clearly an Avengers movie. Like it just, like I know everybody's like, well, hey, at one point Tony Stark was Victor Von Doom, or like was Doctor Doom, and I'm like, yeah, but for a comic, for, I mean, it was like the what if comic. I mean, like, yeah, for that he that would, and the whole premise is what if. I mean,
Exactly.
is that
If
what
your argument is it happened in a what if comic, it's like, you know what a what if comic is, though, right?
right?
I have a what if comic. eh, I don't love it. I think the author took some liberties that kind of weren't
But we
great, but
did, and my point is, we already did that with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. You had what if? You had
yeah,
what if Peggy was Captain America? What if that Mordo was the Sorcerer Supreme? You had your what ifs. Like you can't keep doing what ifs and calling it a movie.
exactly.
You have the
And I have a
series What
yeah,
If. Explore it there.
yeah, yeah. It's
Is he are they doing a what if? And he's that's
and that's the part that gets me because if it was just
he's going to voice him in the what if series?
if it
Like,
was just a whatever movie, but the fact that you slapped the Avengers title on it, that's what makes
scary.
it puts it at it's a different standard now
Yeah. Yeah.
because the Avengers movies are the big ones because that's the team up. You can have whoever's origin story, you can have whoever's sequel, their trilogy, you can do all of that. But once you slap an Avengers title on it, it means more.
And then it gives me creepy vibes of, okay, so you really fumbled Secret Invasion. Okay. And that was about looking one
Mm.
way and it being another, and deception, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
But it quickly fell apart, Again, is that what are you trying, like, it gives me Secret Invasion vibes. Like it gives me of like maybe what it should have been, but now you're gonna be like, is he gonna be like, oh, I'm Tony Stark from another universe, but secretly I'm Victor Von, like, I instantly, when I saw it on Twitter, I was like, no, just no, like,
It
don't
took me
like,
a little bit longer to get there, and I was excited, I think, along with everybody else and maybe everyone else because they were in Hall H. There was nervous clapping, but they all cheered and everything, which was awesome.
right.
But once you really step back and think about it, and like you said, there are going to be people, there are comic people who I follow who have read more. I love reading comics, but there's people I follow that have read more comics than I've ever read in my life. And they are talking about how this happens. Okay, fine. Here's the thing. I don't care. It doesn't make
There's
sense.
so yeah, but we don't make a huge Avengers movie for everything that has happened in the comics. Because like you're at this point, everything has happened in the comics. Like you name it, it's probably happened in the comics in some sort of way. But we shouldn't, because I can't, because I mean that might be what we're doing. They shouldn't be taking We shouldn't be doing just anything that the comics came up with. We should be like, there's some of those storylines, some of the, like, again, they were one-offs. They were short storylines. Like you don't just take, like yeah.
There's a comic that has pink kryptonite, and pink kryptonite turns Superman gay. We don't need to put that into a movie. We don't need to do that. Who was in a comic? That I don't care. I don't
Right.
care. We don't need to
I
put that in a movie.
it did. Yes, I mean, you can.
We
I,
always say we have always been big on the use the source material, but we also are like also use common sense, and like not everything needs to, and not everything in the comics needs to be put into the movies. There's a lot of time they could backtrack. They could go and be like, you know what? And
This
fire
was
them, and
like,
it would be egg on their face for a minute. But I feel like at the end of the day, they could come out the other side and be like, yeah, our bad.
but it's like
But
it's
I
like
don't think they're going to.
no, but like it's like even with like this, I love Catherine Hahn, love her. I, I don't know if we need an Agatha series
She
when
was a
you
fan favorite in the series, and I feel
right
like they greenlit her
when
too
you
fast.
right and you when the character who should be having that should have won should have had a bigger role in WandaVision and should be then having a series is Mephisto. Like
Yes.
you it, I, it's just like I, you're doing too much.
And I don't think the Agatha thing is really going to go anywhere. I mean,
But
obviously
then
they
why
could
do it?
bring back. Yeah, exactly. Like I think, well, I'm torn.
And how much lead up? Okay, and then you go into this, so you know that's not gonna, and nothing's gonna come from that, and there
Exactly.
shouldn't be anything that comes from that. But there's always a huge lead up going into these Avenger movies, or at least should be. Again,
Right.
like again, should be because of what we grew, quote unquote, grew up with. You set the standard. You set the standard of there's lead, there is tie-in, and like there's a big payoff in the end. You are either doing a one-off movie, that this big Avengers movie that there is no lead up to, boom, they all just find themselves battling Doctor, or there's a good amount of lead up and you metaphorically have a Robert Downey Jr. sticking his hand into a gauntlet, eventually bringing I just
Yeah, and
it
I'm curious
exhausts me.
how it ties into the Fantastic Four, because that's a period piece that's supposed to happen in the 60s.
Just one movie.
Yeah,
One
I don't know.
movie. So are you going to then have the Fantastic Four show up in other things? And are
Yeah,
they
so
going
did
to
they give their
hint
calendars?
about?
So we've got Fantastic Four, we've got the new Captain America movie, which I don't see Doctor Doom fitting into that. Also, they apparently changed Giancarlo Esposito's character. George Washington Bridge is not actually who he's playing.
Sidewinder from the
Yeah,
Serpent Society,
yeah. So anyway, so there's that movie,
Thunderbolts.
Thunderbolts, and all of that is very Earth-based. Then you've got Fantastic Four, which does deal
But
with the cosmic.
but you have Val apparently. The rumor is that Val from the Thunderbolts has bought the Stark Tower.
Is that okay? I need to go back and watch their Thunderbolts. Obviously they didn't show a trailer. They were just on
Right.
stage. Was there anything revealed on during their panel?
That from my understanding, that was kind of alluded to that, and um I guess I can't think of her face now. Florence Pugh, I guess, play is like a major, or like they it. Someone said Bucky. Sebastian Stan alluded to. He's like, it's been a pleasure playing, and the way he stated it sounds like he was gonna die in Thunderbolt. I mean, like, but that's a who knows.
They did announce also, so July 25th of next year. So like a year from now is the Fantastic Four movie.
Okay.
They did allude to Nova, I think, getting um a whatever. Then you've also got Blade, but again, we don't know
You
the
know,
Nova Corps.
I again, why I don't do
I'm torn.
because again, If
I like
all
the
of this
idea.
leads
Yeah,
to Tony Stark slash Von Doom, just you should have been doing it already because
yeah,
this movie is coming out in what, 3 years? Two.
yeah. I just again,
Yes.
obviously they had to pivot. Well, they had to do some sort of pivot after they removed Jonathan Majors.
Mhm.
Fine. Recast him and continue with the Kang storyline. But you removed Kang altogether, and now you are pivoting. My hope is that enough people talk about this and they bring in some really good writers to find a way to connect the dots. But like you
My only
said,
saving grace is it's the Russo brothers. Like
yes,
they maybe, and they'll tell people what they like, movies going up to it, they'll have a hand in saying, hey, this is where ultimately we're going. Make sure that something in your movie ties to this in some sort of way, because it's taken how long to get something that refers back to the Eternals
right. Every
with
movie, every TV show that has come out that has been on Earth, I have I have mentioned it because
everybody
what
kind
are
of wonders why, right?
now we know that that is where adamantium is coming from. So we're getting adamantium and vibranium, which also brings up an interesting philosophical question about Wolverine's origin story in the MCU. Or is he going to be just Savage Wolverine with the bone, and then in 2025 or whenever they have this movie set is when he gets his adamantium? So are we going to see like Wolverine just getting his claws, which I think could be an interesting angle. It's not impossible to do. I mean, I thought it was ridiculous that we were going to get introduced to a new Spider-Man in the MCU who was already kind of doing the job, but still learning the job, but we never really see the Uncle Ben origin story. They're like,
Hmm.
oh, we're skipping past that. And I was like, okay, good luck with that. And it worked. So if you say, hey, we're bringing in mutants at some point eventually, maybe they didn't mention that at all, really,
They just
and
think that saying mutants every once in a while in a movie and in the
just
series
enough.
works.
And then we see Hank at the end of the Marvels, but yeah, at this point, I need more than that. I just if they came and said we're introducing the mutants, and in this version, Wolverine is just now getting his claws, I'd be like, you know what? Okay, fine, because I don't know how else you're gonna do that one unless he's had. I don't. I
Right?
don't know.
They've they've painted themselves into a corner, and I'm interested in how they're going to get themselves out at this point.
Yeah,
But
that's
that's
exactly right.
now it's going to be like I it used to be just super hype going to see these movies. And now it's there's going to be like, yeah, I'm always going to, because I'm always going to want for the best. But now it's going to be a little bit like, oh, good, a Marvel movie, but it's going to be like, all right, let's see, like, what are we doing here? Like, it's more of
Yeah,
like a curiosity of like, what? Okay, what are we doing here? Like, what? Let me see if like you. I don't mean like I'm not the ultimate judger, but it's like, hey, let's see if you know what you're doing. Like, let's see if you
yeah,
even have a plan.
yeah.
Like, what is your plan? Like, every
One hundred
movie is going to
percent,
be like,
one
what's your
hundred
plan?
percent. I don't love the universe, the MCU, like I did before,
Right.
and I think that's not a hot take. I think everyone feels that way. And again, same with Star
Definitely.
Wars. We can still enjoy different parts of it and still be critical. There are people that hate the MCU since Endgame. There are people that pretend to love everything about it. I am someone that can find things I enjoy in each movie,
Sure.
but knowing the standard you set, and I realized there was going to be some drop off. I realized there were going to be some questions in the roadmap, but your stories aren't connecting. Some of your stories shouldn't even exist in the first place. It's just very confusing.
Right.
And now, yeah, we're looking at trailers, we're looking at the cast, and instead of getting hype and excited, we are hoping that it doesn't crash and burn and
Right.
ruin
It's
the
making us
character that we
scratch
love.
our heads if you really have learned less. Like, have
Yeah.
you really learned? Like, we're in another podcast, we're going to talk about our feeling. We're going to wait for Deadpool to be out for a little while longer because we're going to definitely, it's definitely going to be spoiler heavy. We're going to talk about intricacies and cameos and everything that's in the movie. Um, they this is not a spoiler, but very much throughout a theme of that movie is they are very much crapping on the MCU and the direction it's taken.
Yeah.
Rightly so. I mean, like, they're doing it very in a very tongue-in-cheek, cheeky style, doing that. But you're like, oh, okay. So you see that, and you see that movie and you're like, oh, they got it. They under like, Kevin Feige even allowed them to pay to just poke at them, like, we know we messed up the multiverse and we threw out too much there and it was so convoluted and
He's even
it,
publicly stated it outside of the movies. He has
right.
publicly said that.
But you have that
And
movie
then
where
they
like
do
they're
this.
hammering it to you for like 2 hours and 15 minutes,
Yeah.
like, hey, we effed up, like, we know our mistakes and these and literally few hours later after this movie drops, you're like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna bring back Robert Downey Jr. You're like, oh, but so you didn't learn any.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that in a later one. We are glad that you stuck around for this. We know we covered a lot, but it's going to get interesting for sure with every
Yes,
movie, series, whatever. We will be keeping an eye out on all of it to see
it's true.
if there are any, if you can sniff any hints of Von Doom coming in the future. We're not very hopeful, but
Yeah.
that's what we'll do. That's kind of part of our homework assignment. What we'll keep an eye out for you. So until then, we will talk to you later with our next one about Deadpool. So
Yes.
talk to you later.
See ya.